My name is Megan Coleman, and I am 27 years old. I was scrolling through my phone after a shift that nearly broke me. 12 hours, 3 codes, and my left foot throbbing because some patient in withdrawal stomped on it hard enough to crack a bone. That's when the notification from Coleman Clan lit up my cracked screen. Caitlin had snapped a photo of me in the break room doorway. My scrubs were baggy and stained yellow under the arms, my hair was plastered to my forehead like wet newspaper, and the exhaustion on my face could curdle milk. When your little sister still dresses like a homeless person even though she's a nurse lol. Already 3 cousins had laugh reacted. A 4th had typed OMG dead. My thumb froze over the screen. I could feel the heat climbing up my neck. I didn't type a single word. I didn't fire back. I didn't even block her. I simply opened the Hillcrest Pharmacy app, found the medication management subscription. It'd been funding quietly every 15th for 3 straight years. $800 a pop, $28,800 in total, and hit cancel. Confirmed. Done. Then I slipped my phone back into my pocket, turned off the lamp, and stared at the dark ceiling. Before I tell you what happened after I canceled that payment, tell me, what time is it where you are? Where are you watching from? And what is the weather like there? I'm curious to see how far this story will travel. 3 months earlier. I live in a shoebox studio on East Riverside Drive in Austin, and I drive a 2015 silver Honda Civic that sounds like a lawnmower whenever I go over 40. I'm a registered nurse at St. David's Medical Center. Most shifts I run on coffee, protein bars, and the stubborn belief that if I just keep my head down, my family might finally notice. I'm not the burden they've labeled me since high school. My older sister Caitlin is 31, works part-time at some boutique on South Congress, and has somehow convinced everyone, my parents, our Aunt Lydia, half our church, that she's the one holding our family together. She posts photos with their medication bags, hashtags them family first, and the comments flood in calling her an angel. Meanwhile, every 15th, my credit card silently covers their $800 pharmacy subscription at Hillcrest Pharmacy. I set it up 3 years ago. My parents have no idea. They think Caitlin handles everything. They think I'm just the tired sister who shows up late to Sunday dinner in scrubs that smell like antiseptic and failure. And honestly, I let them believe it, because fighting for credit in my family felt like screaming into a pillow, loud, exhausting, and completely pointless. But that was before my own aunt called me to thank Caitlin for handling the prescriptions, and before I discovered the loyalty points from my payments had bought my sister a luxury skincare set. 3 months earlier, I remember dragging myself home after a 16-hour shift, my scrubs crusted with God knows what, my legs pulsing like overboiled sausages. The drive back to my studio on East Riverside was a blur, just the hum of my 2015 Civic and the flickering streetlights of Austin at 4 a.m. I parked under the one broken lamp in the lot, grabbed my cracked phone off the passenger seat, and there it was. Caitlin's Instagram story, glowing on my screen like a slap in the face. She had positioned herself at the Hillcrest Pharmacy counter on South Congress, angled just enough to catch the morning light through the window, hair done, full makeup, that smug half-smile she practices in the mirror. In her hand, a crisp white prescription bag, mom's inhaler, dad's blood pressure meds, the caption, "Taking care of my folks, family first, blessed." I sat there in the dark car, engine ticking as it cooled, and just stared, because I knew what that bag actually cost. $800 a month, pulled from my credit card on the 15th like a silent alarm. And just hours earlier, during my lunch break, which was really 10 minutes hunched over a tuna sandwich in the break room, I'd been on the phone with that very same pharmac I. My card had expired, and I was half whispering the new number into the receiver so my coworkers wouldn't hear. Yes, the auto pay for the Colemans. Yes, the same account. Yes, I authorize it. I'd been doing it for 2 years at that point, $28,000 and counting, and nobody in my family knew. They thought Dad's pension and Caitlin's magical organizational skills kept the medications flowing. She'd never once said, "Oh, actually, Megan pays for it." She just smiled and posted and collected the praise. I scrolled past her story and hit mute. Not block, not confront, mute. That had been my strategy since we were kids. Swallow the bitterness, bury it under exhaustion, and pray for sleep. I dragged myself up the stairs, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed onto my futon. The ceiling fan wobbled above me, click, 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 as I closed my eyes. I didn't text her, didn't call my parents, just lay there in the half-light, my stethoscope still coiled on the nightstand, the faint smell of antiseptic clinging to my pillow. And I told myself it didn't matter. That credit was a small thing, a petty thing. That family was family. But deep down, something was already cracking. The following Thursday, my landline screamed at 7:15 a.m. I fumbled for the receiver, still tangled in my sheets, the worn navy blue phone case digging into my palm. "Megan, sweetheart, it's Aunt Lydia." Her voice was honey warm, a Dallas drawl that always sounded like a hug. I forced my eyes open and stared at the ceiling fan, still wobbling its click, click, click. "I just had to call, and thank you and Caitlin for getting all those medications sorted for Patricia and Harold. The pharmacy called me to confirm something, and I realized, well, I just had to thank you both." I sat up slowly, the futon creaking beneath me. My chipped coffee mug from nursing school sat on the nightstand, cold and empty, a hairline crack snaking down its side. "She's grown up so much, that girl," Aunt Lydia continued, her voice brimming with pride. "You know, at the church picnic last Sunday, Caitlin told everyone she was the one managing your parents' prescriptions. She said it was such a big responsibility, but she wanted to do it. I was so touched. She's really become the backbone of that family now, hasn't she?" My knuckles whitened around the receiver. I stayed silent, just listening. I remember when she used to forget to feed her goldfish, and now she's handling all those medications. I'm so proud of her. And you working all those hours at the hospital. You must be relieved to know your sister is taking care of the little things. Little things. My credit card, bleeding $800 a month on autopay, like a silent, invisible wound. The same credit card that had bought her goldfish-keeping sister a new pair of designer sunglasses last month, while I wore scrubs so worn they were practically transparent. "Your mom says Caitlin even picks up the meds herself," Aunt Lydia added, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. "She's so humble about it. Never brags. That's the mark of true character, don't you think?" I could almost hear the echo of the church congregation nodding, see Caitlin bowing her head in fake modesty, her hands folded like a saint's. I cleared my throat. "Of course, Aunt Lydia. That's wonderful to hear." My voice came out as a whisper, not a lie, but a ghost of one. She kept talking for another 5 minutes, filling my ear with praise for my sister, while I traced the crack in my coffee mug with my thumb. The same mug it had since my first year of nursing school, back when I'd believed that hard work and sacrifice would eventually be seen. When she finally hung up, the receiver clattered into the cradle, and I sat there in the half-dark, my stethoscope still coiled on the nightstand, the weight of 28,800 pressing against my ribs. I didn't correct her, didn't say a single true word, just stared at the cracked phone, feeling like a ghost in my own family. And somewhere deep in my chest, the crack widened into a chasm. About a month later, I found myself at my parents' breakfast table on Birchwood Drive, helping Mom sort through a mountain of mail. Morning sun poured through the bay window, illuminating dots dancing above a stack of unopened bills. Mom was on her second cup of coffee, humming a hymn, the kind of peaceful Saturday I rarely got to see. Then a pale pink envelope slipped from between a credit card offer and an electric bill. It landed face up, revealing a handwritten address in looping cursive, to Caitlin, with love from the women of St. Anne's. Mom's brow furrowed. She picked it up, turned it over, confusion clouding her eyes. What's this about? I didn't know Caitlin was involved with the church group. My heart lurched. It learned not to trust the flutter of gratitude around my sister. I took the envelope from Mom's hand, my fingers cool and steady. Probably just a thank you note, I said, forcing a lightness into my voice. I slipped it into my jacket pocket before she could argue. Let me handle it, Mom. You finish your coffee. Later that evening, alone in my studio, I stared at the unopened card. The scent of old perfume clung to it. Inside, a note penned with deliberate care. Caitlin, you're an angel for letting us help. Enclosed is $600 toward the medicine your parents can't afford. May God bless your devoted heart. My stomach twisted. Medicine they can't afford. The words burned into my retinas. I was paying $800 a month, every month, so they'd never have to worry. And here was a check, made out to Caitlin, for a burden shed never carried. I called St. Anne's coordinator the next morning. I used a polite, professional tone, pretending to update family contact records. The woman on the other end, Margaret, was sweet to the point of syrupy. She gushed about Caitlin's dedication, her tireless visits, the way she'd tear up when describing Dad's heart meds and Mom's inhalers. Margaret confirmed my sister had collected $1,200 over the past year, every cent earmarked for medical expenses. No one ever thought to verify. No one asked me. I thanked Margaret and hung up, the crack in my chest splitting a little deeper. $1,200 Caitlin had pocketed, while my autopay silently kept our parents alive. The evidence was mounting, but the weight was mine alone. I filed the note and the call details away, another sharp stone in the growing pile. Somewhere inside me, the ghost was learning to scream. I remember the heat that day, blistering and relentless, the kind of Texas summer that makes the asphalt shimmer. The air in my Civic was like a furnace, the driver's side window stuck half down again. I'd been meaning to fix it for 2 years, but $800 a month doesn't leave much for car repairs. Hillcrest Pharmacy smelled like air conditioning and antiseptic, a familiar comfort after 3 years of walking through those sliding doors. I was just there for my own allergy pills, nothing dramatic, just a quick stop on my way home from a 12-hour shift. Mr. Nguyen was working the counter, the same pharmacist who'd watched me silently shoulder this burden since I was 24. He knows me by name now, knows my parents' names, knows the whole quiet arrangement. Megan, he said, scanning my box of generic Allegra. Before you go, did you want to redeem any of the loyalty points on the Coleman account? You've got 4,800 points about to expire. I blinked at him. Loyalty points. I never even thought about loyalty points. What loyalty points? I asked. He turned the screen toward me, pointing at the number. The medication management program, he explained. Every prescription earns points. You've been accumulating them for years. Something cold crept up my spine. Can you print the redemption history? Mr. Nguyen frowned slightly but tapped a few keys. The receipt printer whirred and there it was, 6 months of point redemptions. Month after month, points cashed in for luxury face serums, vitamin C brightening treatments, hyaluronic acid eye creams. The kind of products that cost $60, $70 a tiny bottle. These were all redeemed under a different phone number, I said quietly. My voice didn't sound like my own. Mr. Nguyen checked the account notes. Yeah, he said. The secondary number on file, Caitlin's. I stood there, holding that receipt, feeling the weight of every dollar I'd spent over 3 years. $28,800 on my credit card, and she'd been collecting the points like they were her personal Sephora rewards program. While I wore scrubs so worn they practically disintegrated. While I drove a car with a broken window and ate instant noodles 3 nights a week. My sister was feeding her skincare obsession with points earned from medications that kept our parents alive. I scanned the receipt with my cracked phone, added it to a folder I'd quietly named Receipts, and walked back into the heat. The Civic's engine coughed when I turned the key, the half-open window letting in waves of scorching air. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, and for the first time in 3 years, I didn't cry. I just drove home, the ghost inside me sharpening her teeth. Sunday, October 15th, the day the bills finally came due. I remember the light that morning, sharp and golden, cutting through the cheap blinds of my Riverside studio. I was nursing a cup of coffee in my chipped nursing school mug, the one that says Concordia across the front in fading letters. The world felt strange, like the air before a thunderstorm. It slept deeper than I had in years, no ghost hovering behind my eyes, just quiet. My phone buzzed at 10:47 a.m. Mom. I stared at the name for 3 full rings before I picked up. When I did, her voice was a tight wire of confusion, fraying at the edges. Megan? Hillcrest just called. They said there's no payment on file for our medication subscription. They can't release the prescriptions. What is going on? I set the mug down. The clink it made against my counter sounded like a gavel. I canceled the subscription, Mom. A beat of stunned silence. Then Patricia Coleman, master of passive concern, went into full anxious flutter. You canceled it? But sweetheart, why? Your father needs his blood pressure medication and my thyroid pills. Is everything okay? Did you lose your job? Her voice held that familiar rhythm, worry wrapped in velvet, always assuming I was the fragile one about to shatter. I didn't shatter. I poured more coffee. Everything's fine at work, Mom. I didn't lose my job. I just stopped paying for a service that everyone seems to think Caitlin handles. Since she's the one who posts about taking care of you, I figured it'd let her actually do it. I heard her breath catch. Then the confusion morphed into something sharper. Megan, what are you talking about? Caitlin doesn't. She doesn't have that kind of money. You know that. How could you just pull the rug out like this? Your father and I need those medications. I leaned against the counter and watched a pigeon land on the fire escape outside my window. I felt absolutely calm. I paid $800 every single month for 3 years, Mom. $28,800. All while Caitlin collected $1,200 from the church community, saying she needed it for your medical bills. I have the receipts, literally. I have the loyalty records from Hillcrest, showing she redeemed the points for her own luxury skincare. I have the screenshots from the Coleman clan group, where she posted a photo of me after a 12-hour shift, calling me homeless. I paused. The pigeon preened its wing. So no, I'm not pulling any rugs. I'm just stepping off the one you've been standing on for a decade. If Caitlin wants the credit, she can learn the math. Patricia's voice dissolved into protest, but I wasn't listening anymore. I ended the call. Then I opened my laptop, pulled up that draft email, and added a single line. Here is the proof you've all been asking for. I hit send to the Coleman clan. Within seconds, my phone exploded. Notifications from cousins, from aunts, from my father's number. I let the screen flicker. Then I powered it off, grabbed my keys to the Honda Civic, and drove toward the hill country with the windows down, feeling the Texas wind scrape my cheeks clean. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't the exhausted sister, the invisible provider, the punchline. I was just Megan. And that, I realized, was more than enough. The next morning, I threw myself into an extra 12-hour shift at St. David's. Trauma Bay was chaos, and chaos was exactly what I needed. IV lines to run, wound dressings to change, an elderly woman in room 3 who kept calling me by her daughter's name. I didn't correct her. It felt easier than being Megan. 15. My phone buzzed against the counter at the nurse's station. Mom. I stared at the screen, watched her photo flash, a picture from 3 Christmases ago, where she was still looking at me like I mattered. I sent it to voicemail. 2 minutes later, the notification dinged. I stepped into the supply closet, surrounded by sterile gauze and the sharp smell of antiseptic, and pressed play. Mom's voice was thin, wavering at the edges like old fabric about to tear. Megan, honey? The pharmacy just called. They said the card on file was declined. The medication won't be ready for the 15th, but I thought Caitlin was handling all of this. She's always said she takes care of everything. Can you call her? Or just talk to her? I don't understand what's happening. A long pause on the recording. I could hear her breathing, hear the clock ticking in their kitchen on Birchwood, hear my father asking something muffled in the background, then her voice dropped quieter. I don't want to bother Caitlin if she's busy. You know how she gets. Just help me figure it out, sweetheart. Please. I gripped the edge of a metal shelf until my knuckles went white. Help her figure it out, as if I hadn't been the one figuring it out for 3 years. As if Caitlin's lie had so thoroughly wrapped itself around the truth that even the evidence of a declined card couldn't cut through it. I deleted the voicemail. Just pressed the little trash icon and watched it disappear, like erasing a symptom without curing the disease. My thumb hovered over Mom's contact for a moment. I could call her back. I could drive to Round Rock right now and sit her down at the kitchen table and show her every receipt, every bank statement, every church collection note. But I already sent the evidence package to the Coleman clan. The truth was out, and still, she called me first, asking me to talk to Caitlin. As if I were the assistant, the fixer, the go-between, never the person who actually did the work. I pocketed my cracked phone and walked back into the trauma bay. The elderly woman in room 3 was crying again, reaching for a hand that wasn't there. I took it. Her fingers were cold and papery, and she squeezed with surprising strength. It's okay, I said softly. I'm here. And for the next 8 hours, I focused on the people who actually needed me, the ones who didn't take my help and sign someone else's name to it. Saturday evening, the buzzer to my East Riverside studio shrieked so hard I could feel the vibration in my teeth. I peeled myself off the futon, where I'd been staring at the ceiling for 20 minutes, trying to unwind from a double shift. The buzzer kept blaring, relentless, like someone was leaning on it with their full body weight. My neighbor's dog started howling. Through the crackling intercom, I heard Caitlin's voice, pitched high and frantic. Megan, please let me up. The pharmacy account is frozen and Mom and Dad are completely out of their meds, and I already told Aunt Lydia I would handle it, but I don't know the login. I never knew the login, please. I pressed the door release without a word. Her heels hammered up the stairs, fast and desperate, and within seconds she was pounding on my actual door. When I opened it, she practically fell inside. Mascara carved black rivers down both cheeks. Her blonde hair was escaping that signature sleek ponytail she always wears for Instagram. And she was clutching one of those cheap woven tote bags they hand out at Maya Boutique, the logo already peeling, stuffed with her phone and a crumpled receipt. She looked at me with wild eyes, breathing hard. You have to fix this, Meg. Mom called me crying. Dad's blood pressure meds are gone. I told Aunt Lydia I'd take care of it, but I can't even log in. I don't know the password. I don't know the security question answers. I don't know anything. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Why would you know the login, Caitlin? You've never paid a single cent. Her mouth opened, closed. Nothing came out. I walked past her to my small desk, where a manila folder had been waiting since Friday morning. The one I'd assembled after I sent the family group chat the entire file, pharmacy statements, loyalty point redemptions for luxury skincare, the church donation records, the screenshots of every Instagram post she'd made with mom and dad's medication bags. I pulled out the first page and handed it to her, a printout of 36 months of automatic payments. $800 every 15th, $28,800. My credit card, my money. Her hands started shaking, the paper crinkled. Then I handed her the timeline, one page, bullet by bullet, date by date, documenting every lie she'd told, every dollar she'd pocketed, every piece of credit she'd stolen. She stared at it, and her face just crumpled, not dramatic sobbing, just a slow, silent collapse, like a house of cards folding in on itself. I sent this to everyone this morning, I said quietly. Aunt Lydia, the cousins, the church group, mom and dad, they all know. She looked up at me, and for the first time in years, there was no performance, no camera, no filter. I took the tote bag from her hand, set it on the floor, and walked her to the open door. You built this, Caitlin, you figure it out. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. The click echoed through my quiet apartment, through the wood. I heard her footsteps retreating down the stairs, slower now, heavier. I stood there for a long moment, my forehead pressed against the cool door, and breathed. Sunday morning, my phone buzzed off the nightstand like a trapped bee. The Coleman clan group chat had erupted, message after message, all caps, question marks, that one aunt who never types anything suddenly typing paragraphs. Aunt Lydia was the first I actually read. Wait, Caitlin took money from the church, followed by 3 exploding head emojis. My cousin Marcus, the one who'd laughed at my Scrubs photo a month ago, typed, "The loyalty points for face creams are just mean. Mean. Not illegal, not cruel, just mean." I almost laughed. Almost. Then my mother called, I let it ring. Then again. On the 3rd ring, I picked up and put her on speaker. Her voice was a wet mess. "Megan? Sweetheart." I went back through the emails. 3 years, every month, and I never once said thank you. She was crying. I was walking out of my apartment, keys in hand, heading to my silver Civic. I got in the car and drove to Juan in a million on autopilot. I needed something normal. Something that tasted like Austin and not like all of this. While I waited in line, Mom kept talking. "Caitlin came by last night. She was frantic, saying you had the evidence. She wanted me to call you, to convince you to, I don't know, cover it up." And I realized, my mother said, her voice cracking, I realized I'd been believing a ghost you paid for. I ordered the Don Juan, extra salsa, just like always. The cashier smiled, and I smiled back. It felt foreign on my face. I told my mother it was going to be okay. I said we'd figure out the pharmacy, that I'd help them set up their own payment, but I wouldn't pay anymore. She understood. She finally understood. After I hung up, my phone buzzed one last time. A text from Dad, 4 words. No emoji. No capitals. "I'm sorry we never thanked you." I saved that message instantly. Screenshot. Backed up to the cloud, not for evidence, the evidence was already out there. I saved it because it was the only thing I'd ever really wanted from them, to be seen. Caitlin's Instagram went dark. No stories, no posts, no performance. Her whole fake caretaker persona just evaporated, and the silence, it was the most honest thing she'd ever done. Monday afternoon, I pulled my Honda into the driveway of 401 Birchwood and just sat there. Engine ticking. The same dented garage door, the same dying azalea bush I'd walked past 1,000 times. But this time, I didn't rush inside to fix something. I sat. Mom opened the screen door before I knocked. The kitchen table was covered in papers. Every pharmacy receipt I'd emailed, printed out, with a yellow highlighter tracing the dates. 36 months. $28,800. Dad's reading glasses were perched crooked on his nose. He didn't look up right away. He just tapped a line on the page like it was a foreign language he was trying to translate. For 2 hours we talked. Not the surface stuff, not Mom's garden or Dad's sciatica. The real kind. I told them I had been drowning for 3 years and nobody noticed. I told them Caitlin stole from the church, stole from them, stole from me, and I was done being the invisible wallet. The thing Jenny just handles. Dad took a long breath. I'm sorry we never thanked you, he said again, out loud this time. His voice cracked on the last word. Mom didn't argue. She didn't defend Caitlin. She just stood up, walked to the cabinet, and pulled out a mug. Not one of her fancy set. It was my mug, the chipped one from nursing school, the one I'd left here years ago. She filled it with tea and set it in front of me. Steam curled up between us like a peace offering. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. 2 days later, Aunt Lydia called me, her voice half laughing, half shocked. You will not believe this, Megan. Caitlin walked into Maya Boutique carrying a shopping bag full of unopened serums and creams, trying to return them for cash. The manager said no, so she tried another store, and another. Eventually some place gave her store credit enough to pay off one Visa bill. I didn't laugh, I just leaned back in my chair and looked out at the Austin skyline. The pharmacy autopay was off, the credit card was mine again. And somewhere out there, my sister was haggling over face cream just to stay afloat. The universe, it turned out, had a hell of a sense of irony. 3 Saturdays later, I was standing on the Riverwalk in San Antonio, a cold margarita in hand, watching the boats glide by. The air smelled of fajitas and river water. My phone buzzed on the table, the Coleman clan group chat, probably. I didn't look. I just let the salt sting my lips. That $800 a month I'd freed up, it bought that weekend. And a deposit on a 1-bedroom in South Congress, a window facing east. The kind of apartment my sister would have mocked. I signed the lease, and the pen felt heavier than my stethoscope. At St. David's, I applied for the charge nurse training. I told no one, studied on my breaks with my old notes. When I passed the exam, my supervisor Denise just looked at me. Finally, she said. More praise than I'd gotten from my family in a decade. The day of acceptance, I walked the floor in my same old scrubs. Baggy, faded, stained, but with a new badge pinned to my chest. No one in my family saw it. No one had to. In the med room mirror, I caught my reflection. Same tired eyes, same hands that held so many dying fingers. But my shoulders? They were back. I was not invisible anymore, not to me. Aunt Lydia texted me a photo one morning. Caitlin at Hillcrest Pharmacy, actually standing in line with a prescription bag, her face pinched like she'd just bitten a lemon. The caption read, "She's doing it herself now. Miracles." I typed back, "Good for her," and returned to my charting. I didn't need to gloat. The universe had already handled that. Every 15th, the $800 stayed in my account. I bought new scrubs that fit, still not designer, just ones that felt like armor. I started saying no to extra shifts. To relatives who only called when they wanted something. To the lie that love was a silent invoice. My care had never been in the receipts. It had always been in my hands. It's strange how quiet it gets after you stop being the one who carries everything. The first few weeks, my phone barely buzzed. No frantic calls about prescriptions. No group chat gossip. Just silence. And honestly, that silence felt like the first real peace I'd had in years. I remember one evening, I was sitting on the floor of my new apartment on South Congress, the one I signed for after passing the charge nurse exam. The walls were still bare, but I'd hung my nursing school mug on a hook by the window. The same chipped mug Mom gave me tea in, that last time I visited. I traced the crack with my thumb and finally let myself feel it all. The exhaustion, the anger, and underneath, something I hadn't let myself admit, I was proud. Not of the revenge, not of exposing Caitlin, but of finally choosing myself. My parents call now, not to ask for money but to talk, real talk. Dad sends me photos of his garden. Mom texts me recipes. It's not perfect, we're still repairing years of silence, but it's honest. As for Caitlin, she's doing it herself now. Her story isn't mine to carry anymore. The thing nobody tells you about being the invisible one is that you don't need a big dramatic exit. You just need to stop paying the toll. My love was never in those pharmacy receipts. It was in my hands, the ones that held patients as they took their last breath, the ones that wiped away my own tears after 12-hour shifts. And now, those hands are busy building a life I chose. If you've ever been the quiet foundation everyone leaned on, the one nobody thanked but everyone depended on, I see you. You matter, and it's never too late to stop letting your kindness be stolen. If this story moved you, share your own story in the comments, hit like and subscribe. I read every comment.